On the morning of October 29, 2009, two Cleveland police officers walked up the porch steps of a house on Imperial Avenue to serve an arrest warrant. The man they were looking for wasn't home, but the officers never made it past the front door. The smell hit them first. It rolled out of that house like something living. It was thick, sweet, and wrong. One officer would later describe it as something he couldn't unsmell. What they found inside would take days to fully uncover. There were 11 women buried in the basement, stuffed into crawl spaces, or hidden in the backyard, and in a bucket, wrapped in a paper bag, there was a single human skull. The man who lived there, the man they'd come to arrest for a single attack, had been taking lives for over 2 years, and the entire time, his neighbors had been living next door breathing that same air, blaming the smell on the sausage factory across the street. This is the story of Anthony Sowell, aptly named the Cleveland Strangler, and how a city looked the other way while 11 women vanished, one by one, from right under its nose. The address was 12205 Imperial Avenue, a cramped two-story house in Cleveland's Mount Pleasant neighborhood. It was the kind of street where people sit on their porches and know each other's names. For 4 years, Anthony Sowell lived there. He was 50 years old, a former Marine who earned his living selling scrap metal. Neighbors called him quiet, polite even, but for months the people on Imperial Avenue had been complaining to the health department and to the city about a smell. It was a smell so bad it seeped into their own kitchens, their own bedrooms. They were told it was the sausage shop. Ray's sausage shop sat right next door, and anyone who's ever lived near a meat processing plant knows what that can do to the air. So the smell was explained away. That theory was wrong. It was wrong by 11 bodies. But here's the truly terrifying part. The clock was running the entire time. Let me show you the timeline because this is where it gets worse. Crystal Dozier, a 38-year-old mother of 7, disappeared in May of 2007. Tashana Culver, a 31-year-old woman, vanished in June of 2008. Lashonda Long, only 25 and the youngest of them all, disappeared in August 2008. When they finally found her, they found only her skull. The rest of her body has never been recovered. Michelle Mason, Tonya Carmichael, Kim Yvette Smith, Imelda Hunter, Nancy Cobbs, Talacia Fortson, Janice Webb, Diane Turner, 11 women, spread across 2.5 years, all of them black, 10 of them were mothers, and nearly all of them shared the same 3 things. They struggled with addiction, they lived in the same neighborhood, and they trusted Anthony Sowell enough to walk through his front door. To understand how a man becomes a monster, you usually have to go back to the beginning, and Sowell's beginning was already soaked in violence. He was born in East Cleveland in 1959, one of 7 children raised by a single mother. By his niece's account, that household was a horror all its own. There was physical abuse, beatings with electrical cords, and worse. By the time Sowell was a teenager, he had already begun to repeat the cycle. The details of what happened inside that house aren't the kind of thing that are easy to hear. What matters is this: the violence didn't start in 2007. It started long before. In 1978, at 18, he joined the United States Marine Corps, and for 7 years on paper, he looked like a model soldier. He earned a Good Conduct Medal, letters of appreciation, and had a clean record. Nobody at Paris Island or Camp Lejeune or Okinawa had any idea what they were training. He was discharged in 1985. 4 years later, in 1989, he attacked a pregnant woman in his own home. He bound her hands and feet, gagged her, choked her until she thought she was going to die. She survived, and she told the police. And in 1990, Anthony Sowell pleaded guilty to attempted SA. He served 15 years. And in 2005, the state of Ohio opened the gates and let him walk out. This is the part of the story where the question stops being, how could this happen, and becomes, how was this allowed to happen, because the signs were there. Sowell had moved back to Cleveland, into that house on Imperial Avenue. He was a registered offender, and he started luring women, specifically women struggling with addiction, with the same offer again and again. Come over, smoke substances, and I've got drinks. That familiarity is what ended their lives. You have to understand the position these women were in. Investigative reporters who covered this case later said it plainly. Predators like Sowell don't go after people they think will be missed. They go after people they believe society has already written off. And that's exactly what happened. When some of these women vanished, their families went to the police and were told, essentially, that if someone's using drugs, she'll come back when she's ready. Some families were told the police wouldn't even take a report. So the women kept disappearing, and the smell on Imperial Avenue kept getting worse. Here's what the news coverage at the time rarely told you. These weren't just names on a list. Kim Smith took meticulous care of her disabled father. She got him to every doctor's appointment, cooked for him and cleaned for him. Nancy Cobbs had rebuilt her life around her 5 grandchildren. Talacia Fortson was finally turning things around just as she vanished. Diane Turner, a mother of 6, had fought her addiction for decades, was in and out of rehab, and by every account she was a good person. She was Sowell's final victim. In September of 2009, 10 of the 11 women were mothers. 11 lives, 11 families, 11 sets of people who spent months, some of them years, holding flyers and calling hospitals and begging anyone to pay attention. And for most of them, the answer was silence. It took a survivor to finally end it. In September of 2009, Sowell invited a woman named LaTundra Billups to his home to smoke substances. After a few drinks, he turned violent. He hit her and assaulted her. She escaped. And on September 22nd, she walked into a police station and told them exactly what had happened. That report is what finally brought police to the door, an arrest warrant for a single assault. And then, one more woman, Vanessa Gay, survived an encounter with him in the days that followed. 2 women walked out of that house alive, and because they did, the rest of the story came out. On October 31st, 2009, Halloween, the police arrested Anthony Sowell. He was 50 years old. Then came the search, and it went on for days, because the house kept giving up bodies. 2 women buried in a shallow grave in the basement, 4 more on the 3rd floor and inside the crawl spaces. When investigators started digging in the backyard, they found 3 more and the partial remains of a 4th. And in the basement, in a bucket, a skull wrapped in a paper bag. That was the 11th. I'm not going to describe the condition of what they found. You don't need me to. What you need to understand is the scale. 11 women, inside and under one house, on a street where people were sitting on their porches every single day. Most of the victims had been strangled by hand. It's why they called him the Cleveland Strangler. The trial began in June of 2011. Sowell first pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, then simply not guilty. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. On July 22, 2011, he was convicted on nearly every count. 11 counts of aggravated murder, plus kidnapping, rape, and abuse of a corpse. In August, the jury recommended the death penalty. Anthony Sowell never faced that sentence, though. On February 8, 2021, at 61 years old, he died in a prison hospital of a terminal illness. And in December of 2011, the city of Cleveland did the only thing it could do with that house on Imperial Avenue. They tore it down. Today, there's a vacant lot there. Grass now grows where the bodies were. But here's the question that this case leaves behind, and it's not about one man. It's about 11 women who vanished, and a system that let it happen. Reporters who covered this asked it out loud. Families came forward and the police wouldn't take the reports. The media ran stories about stolen Christmas ornaments, while mothers were missing. And the smell that everyone on that street complained about for months was blamed on a sausage factory. 11 women, 2.5 years, one house. How many of them could have been found sooner? How many of them didn't have to die? Anthony Sowell is dead. But the women he killed, Crystal, Tashana, Lashonda, Michelle, Tonya, Kim, Amy, Nancy, Talacia, Janice, Diane, their names deserve to be remembered. Say them out loud, because for too long, nobody did. The horror that happened in that house is over, but the memory lives on. If you want more horrifying stories based on true events and crime, then please help us to stay afloat and like and subscribe to our channel. And in the comments, tell me, which part of this case do you think the city could have done differently first? I read everyone. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media of the latest images, short clips, and updates.